Well, good morning. As Dave mentioned, my name's Ben, if I haven't met you before, and I'll be preaching this morning. And the command we're going to be looking at this morning, last couple of weeks we looked at the commands, forgive one another, accept one another. This morning our command is honor one another. Now, hard to believe it, but next month I am going to be getting married. What? Crazy. Time definitely flies. I think we've been engaged now for 7 or 8 months, and it feels like it's been like 3 days or something like that. I don't know. Anyways, definitely right now is a really exciting time in life as my fiancée Preeti and I are looking forward to the big day and looking forward to getting married and going on a journey with God together as a married couple. Now, definitely it's also been a very busy season of life. It is hard to believe just how much work it takes to plan a wedding. Sometimes we just can't wait to just be married and for life to just be settled and to finally have some free time again. And then people tell us that life only gets busier from here. Great, right? Anyways, Pastor Harry talked to me several months ago and asked if I would like to preach this summer, and after deciding that I would go for it, even in the midst of all the busyness, Harry mentioned to me some of the commands that I could potentially preach on. And when he mentioned the command, honor one another, I thought, yeah, I think that would be a really good one for me to do, as it's just particularly relevant for me in life right now as I learn to better relate to my soon-to-be wife. The last couple months, Preeti and I have been going through premarital counseling with Pastor Dave, and through this process, as well as just in our relationship in general, one of the big things that we've been learning is how to love the other person in the way that they want to be loved, in the way that they receive love, and not just in the way that I like to show it. Now, in my relationship with Froese, I'm learning it for her. It means so much when I just take the time to sit on the couch and watch a movie with her. That just means so much to her. Sometimes I just feel like there's more important things we should be doing with our time, but for her, that just means so much. Now, on the other hand, in our relationship, for me, I just feel so loved and respected when Froese takes the time to ask me questions about my day. And maybe ask me what I've been learning about in philosophy class, or ask me what I've been learning as I work on this sermon that I'm trying to prepare for. When Preeti shows genuine interest in the things that I'm learning about, and initiates conversations with me about the things that I'm passionate about, that just means so much to me. Now, Preeti and I are certainly two very different people in many ways. And for us, learning to show love to the other person in the way the other person wants to be shown love, and deeply respecting each other's differences is, I think, a big part of what it's meant for us to live out this command, honor one another. And with this, let me introduce the key text that we're going to be looking at this morning. It comes from Romans chapter 12, verse 10. The Apostle Paul says, honor one another above yourselves. And let's pray before we continue this morning. God, we thank you so much for the chance that we have to be here to worship you this morning. And we just say that you are so worthy of our worship and so worthy of our lives. And God, I just pray that this morning you would speak to our hearts. And if there's any specific things that God, you want to speak to our hearts, you want to lay on our hearts, God, we just invite you to do that. We invite you to have your way. Amen. So as Dave mentioned earlier, we're doing this series here at Summit Drive this time. We're looking at the one another commands in the New Testament. So we've looked at forgive one another, accept one another. As we go forward, we're going to look at commands like confess your sins to one another, commands like bear each other's burdens, and etc. Now really, all of these one another commands that we find in the New Testament are elaborations on Jesus' all-important command, love one another. And the command we're looking at this morning is certainly no exception. In fact, look at how Paul starts the section where we find this morning's text. Verse 9, love must be sincere. Love must be sincere. I think genuine. I think from the heart. Some translations say love must be without hypocrisy. Our actions can appear loving, but we're not truly acting in love if our loving actions are not from the heart. If our actions are just a way of making us feel better about ourselves, or maybe done as a way to try to get other people to think well of us, or something like that. Love must be sincere, Paul says. He goes on, love must be sincere. Hate what is evil, cling to what is good. Yes, hate what is evil. Hate the things that cause destruction in our lives, and cling to what is good. He continues, be devoted to one another in love. Again, we see that love word once again. And it's in this context that we find the command we'll be focusing on this morning. Honor one another above yourselves. Now, in our 21st century Canadian culture, some of our highest values are things like freedom. In our culture, people generally really love the idea of just being able to, to make their own personal decisions and not be judged for them. Another really highly valued thing in our culture, comfort. People in our culture generally just love the idea of being able to have a nice life for themselves that is free from worry and concern, maybe to be able to go on vacation and all that kind of stuff. And these are just a couple of the really highly valued things in our culture: freedom, comfort. I'm sure the list could go on. Now, in the first century Greco-Roman world, however, the world that Paul is writing in, cultural values were quite significantly different. I found this quote from the Greek philosopher Aristotle, who said, honor is clearly the greatest of external goods. It is honor above all else that the great men claim and deserve. In that world, honor was the ultimate value. Not freedom, not comfort, but honor. To have honor was the most important thing in life. And so much of society revolved around the notion of honor. For example, marriages took place not for personal fulfillment, but for the sake of maintaining and enhancing family honor. People made life decisions not based on what they felt like doing, but what would enhance their own honor and what would avoid shame or disgrace. Life was to be lived to enhance one's personal and family honor at any cost. And with that understanding, this command from the Apostle Paul would have been heard by the Christians in Rome as a command that called them to live in a completely countercultural kind of way. In a society where people were supposed to live to protect their own honor, Paul says, no. Live to honor others instead. And although we here this morning live in a culture that is quite significantly different from the first century Greco-Roman world in many ways, this command we're looking at this morning still has so much relevance for us as well. See, I know that I'm a person who likes to be honored by others. I like it when people notice the good things that I do, and I like it when people speak well of me. And I know that on my worst days, I have a tendency to compare myself with other people, to have a competitive mindset about things that I know that I shouldn't, and sometimes even to speak negatively about other people in order to kind of feel better about myself. So this command that we're looking at this morning certainly challenges me. And if you're anything like me, maybe this command challenges you as well. Listen again to this command now. Honor one another above yourselves. Let's look more closely at this text together. In this phrase, Paul uses just 3 Greek words. The NIV translation up there, the first word he uses is translated honor. The second word, one another. And the third word, above yourselves. The first word Paul uses, the word translated honor, is the Greek word time. This word occurs fairly frequently in the New Testament, and it is often translated honor. But interestingly, it is also used in context where it is translated money or price. Just one example, the word is used in Acts chapter 4, where we read, from time to time, those who owned land or houses sold them, brought the money, or the time, from the sales and put it at the apostles' feet. The word translated money in that context is that Greek word time. And when we look at how this word is used in other contexts, we see that the word time basically means value. See, if I have, a sum of money or a price are equivalent to a particular value, if I have 2 $20 bills in my hand right now, I would have a $40 value in my hand. And in the same way, if you went to Walmart and saw something that was priced for $40, that thing would have the value of $40. Or at least hopefully it would. Now, this is it. Now, interestingly, first century Greco-Roman culture, in that culture, basically it was a person's honor. how well honored that person was in society that basically meant the same thing as that person's value as well. One biblical scholar reflects this notion well when he defines honor as the worth or value of persons, both in their eyes and in the eyes of their village, neighborhood, or society. Now, although we as Christians would reject the view that certain people have greater value because of how honored they are in society, I think that understanding this word teammate does give us some great insight into what it might actually mean to show honor to another person. In light of the use of this word teammate, I think that what it means to honor another person is basically this: to treat another person as value. To treat another person as value. It means to see the value in another person and to relate to that person as such. And this really is something we can live out all the time. We live this out when we go to McDonald's and get our all-day breakfast. I love all-day breakfast, by the way. And we genuinely ask the person who's serving us, how is your day going? When we do that, we don't just treat that person as an employee who's there to serve our needs, but we honor that person as someone who's a person with a story. We live this out when we're here on Sunday morning and someone wants to talk with us who maybe we don't really feel like talking to. We stop and we take the time to listen to that person and genuinely value our time with them. We live this out when we're in a conversation with someone who holds very different beliefs than we do and they try to tear apart our faith. And we respond with love and grace rather than mere defensiveness because we see the value in that person. Of course, there's many other examples I can give. A little over a week ago, while I was at work actually, I ran into Pastor Harry. And he and I got to talking about my sermon and talking about this notion of honoring another person as treating that person as valuable. And Harry mentioned to me that sometimes when he's talking to someone, he visualizes a cross behind that person. See, the reality is, each and every person is infinitely valuable. So valuable to God that he would come in the person of Christ to die for them. Honoring another person means treating that person as though they have the kind of value that they truly do have. People are incredibly valued by God and should be by us as well. All right, you might be thinking, so we should treat other people as valuable. Makes sense, right? But Paul, he takes it one step further still. Honor one another above yourselves. Really? Is that even possible? And what does that even mean? Let's look at what Paul might be getting at here. The third Greek word that Paul uses here is the word the NIV translates above yourselves. And through my reading, I discovered this word basically means to go before and show the way, or to go before and lead. In this context, it can be understood to mean taking the lead in setting an example and showing deference or honor to others. In some other Bible translations, this word is translated as something along the lines of prefer or give preference. And I think that this may further illuminate the meaning of this word in context. In light of all this, I think that when Paul says, honor one another above yourselves, it means something along the lines of this. Live to see others honored and valued before you are honored and valued. Or maybe even this. Prefer to see others honored and valued without even worrying about what other people think of you. Now, that just sounds kind of extreme now, doesn't it? You know, there's a story that's been told about a minister who was known as Principal Cairns. And the story goes like this. Cairns was at a large gathering where he was the member of a platform party. And to try to picture this in my head, I think of the TRU graduation ceremonies where all the people who work for the university kind of have this high standing, sit up front before all the graduates come up. So to continue the story, as Cairns went up the steps to go up on stage, the public noticed him. And all of a sudden, everyone burst into applause. And Cairns was shocked. And he took a step back, and he looked behind him. And he let the man behind him go on ahead. And then he applauded for that man, thinking that the applause was meant for him. Cairns understood what it meant to honor one another above yourselves. As we see in this story, he was oblivious to what other people thought of him. He didn't even consider that. He was only concerned with showing honor to someone else, and he was filled with joy to see another person praised and admired. Could we live lives like that? Lives where we are so unconcerned with what people think of us that we can freely honor and value others instead. Lives where we are so set free from the competitive tendencies of our hearts that we can have true joy when another person is honored, another person is admired, another person is held in high esteem, maybe even another person gets the job promotion instead of us. Wow. This command calls us to live in a radically different kind of way now, doesn't it? It calls us to live lives of affirming and praising the good qualities in others without seeking praise for ourselves. To celebrate the achievements of others, even when we wish that we had achieved what they did. It calls us to show others just how valuable they are to us, even if that other person doesn't do the same. Now, I know it's really hard to live like that. But why? What gets in the way of us honoring one another above ourselves? Or what gets in the way of us maybe even honoring one another at all? What gets in the way? Let's look at some of what Paul says throughout the book of Romans. As we read through the book of Romans, we see that one of the major themes that emerges is the issue of pride, or a sense of superiority that certain Christians have over others. There are at least 4 ways in which we see this, and I don't have time to get into this too much, but you can check out the references later if you want to. 4 things. First of all, Jews may have felt superior to the Gentiles, as they were God's chosen people and had the law and God's promises given to them. Second of all, Gentiles may have had a sense of superiority over the Jews because God reached out to them too, and many of the Jews had rejected the gospel at this point. Third of all, some of these Christians may have had a sense of superiority over others due to their own unique spiritual gift. And Paul addresses this one in Romans 12 also, actually. And fourth of all, some of these Christians may have felt superior because of their socioeconomic status. And Paul mentions this in Romans 12:16. Now notice a couple things here. First of all, in all 4 of these examples, it's this issue of pride, or a sense of superiority that certain Christians have over others that gets in the way of them living like they should. Really, it's pride, I would say, that gets in the way of them living lives of honoring one another. And the same thing happens with us as well. Think about it. I mean, if I keep thinking of myself as a better person, maybe a smarter person, or a person who makes better life decisions than someone else, am I going to treat that person with honor? Especially, am I going to honor that person above myself? Probably not. Second thing to notice here, in all 4 of these examples, we see that the sense of superiority that the Christians in Rome have over one another is tied to their differences. For the Jews and the Gentiles, it had to do with being a part of different racial groups and basically having different religious backgrounds. When Paul addresses the issue of pride in the context of spiritual gifts, again, it's difference that brings out a sense of superiority. And again, in Romans 12:16, it's difference, this time with regard to social standing that leads to a sense of superiority. And I think the same thing happens with us also. Let's spend a little more time focusing on this. What are some of our differences? Some of our differences, like the Christians in Rome, might include things like different religious backgrounds, or maybe more specifically in our context, different church backgrounds. You know, due to having different church backgrounds, we may have different views on secondary theological issues, or maybe different opinions about different disputable matters, as Dave talked about last week. We may be prone to look down on other Christians who have a different view about something like creation, or maybe have a different opinion about whether we should drink alcohol or not. Our differences might also include things like different spiritual gifts as well. For example, one of the gifts that Paul lists in Romans 12:7 is teaching. And I think I might be a person who falls into the category of someone who has this gift. You know, for me, I really enjoy teaching others about Jesus and the Bible. More than that, I'm a person who really loves to read and learn and think and connect with God through my mind at more of an intellectual kind of level sometimes. But I do realize that not everyone is like me. And that's actually a good thing. I mean, imagine how little we would actually help people if all we ever did was sit here and read theology. that would be disastrous. Sometimes, however, I can overvalue my own gift, and sometimes I can have a bit of a sense of superiority over those who aren't as intellectually minded as I am. I know I have to choose to honor and value and actually really seek to learn from people who are differently gifted. To continue, our differences might, like the Christians in Rome, also include things like different socioeconomic status. You know, the other day, I ran into a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a long time. He's currently actually living in a different country, and he was just back in town, just briefly visiting for a period of time. And anyways, he and I got to talking, and he started telling me about his church back home, and unfortunately, some of the really negative experiences that he's been having. He told me that there's a lot of people in his church who make a lot of money, and specifically he told me that basically anyone who has a bit of a lower socioeconomic status, or anyone who has some sort of disability, is basically excluded. And that just broke my heart. The reality is, we still need to hear those words from the Apostle Paul. Romans 12:16, do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Now to continue, I'm just going to mention a few other differences that could potentially get in the way of us honoring one another. How about generational differences? You know, with generational differences often come just some significantly different values and just some misunderstandings about things. How about cultural differences? You know, same thing with this one, right? How about ethnic or racial differences? How about this one even? Personality differences. You know, the fact is, each and every person in this room right now, each and every one of us is different. I would encourage you just to take a look at that list for a second and think about the things that make you different from other people. And ask yourself this question. Do any of these differences get in the way of me honoring and valuing other people like I should? Do any of these differences get in the way of me honoring and valuing other people like I should? Or maybe even ask yourself, are there any particular groups or categories of people that I just have a hard time honoring? I just encourage you to just think about that and pray about that. Maybe if God just is laying anything on your heart, maybe just to really pray about that with Him. You know, I think that honoring people who are different than we are, especially above ourselves, can be a particularly difficult thing for us to do. Now, all of this being said, however, I think that whether there are significant differences between us and other people or not, it is still difficult for us to live out this morning's command. It is still such a challenge to live lives of living to see others honored and valued before we are honored and valued. Why? Martin Luther defines human beings in their sinful state as homos incurvatus in se, meaning humanity turned in on itself. And in the Garden of Eden, we see that the first two people created with value, dignity, and honor do exactly that. They chose to disobey the one command that God had given them. Rather than letting God be God and honoring Him as His creatures, they chose to disobey and dishonor God instead. They chose to try to build an identity for themselves apart from God. And now you and I and every other person has done exactly the same. We're turned in on ourselves, bent to seek our own interests, our own honor, and to seek to try to make a name for ourselves. And this, what we call sin, is ultimately why it's so hard for us to live out this morning's command. But here's the good news. In Philippians 2, we read that Jesus, being in very nature God, yes, Jesus, God the Son, who was with the Father since eternity past, did not consider equality with God something to be used to His own advantage. Rather, He made Himself nothing. Yes, He made Himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Yes, God Himself, the one whom we had dishonored, the one whom we had rebelled against, God came in humility to become one of us. And more, And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself. Yes, Jesus humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on the cross. Jesus lived an obedient life, a perfect life, a life that only deserved honor. But his obedience to his Father's will and his love for you and me led him to die the most shameful death. F. Froese writes this: "To die by crucifixion was to plumb the depths of disgrace. It was a punishment reserved for those who were deemed most unfit to live, a punishment for those who were subhuman. From so degrading a death, Roman citizens were exempt by ancient statute. The dignity of the Roman name would be besmirched by being brought into association with anything as vile as the cross. And Jesus, God himself, would go through that for us. And because Jesus went to the cross, dying in our place and bearing our sin and shame there, only to rise from the dead 3 days later, we find that the forgiveness of sins, a place of honor in God's family, and a new identity as his children are extended to us by grace. Have you trusted in Jesus to forgive your sin, to cover your shame? Have you received Jesus and the new identity that he offers to you? He invites you to do that, maybe even today for the first time. The good news of Jesus is what saves us. It's what brings us back into relationship with God. But even more than that, the good news of Jesus is what changes us. It's what enables us to truly live. It's what enables us to live out this morning's command: honor one another above yourselves. See, through the gospel, we find that we are so deeply valued by God that we no longer need the praise of others in order to know we're valuable. We find that we're restored to a place of honor in God's family, so we no longer have to seek after our own honor anymore. We find that we're given a new identity by grace, so we no longer have to try to build an identity for ourselves now. And so we find that we can let go of the desire to be honored. We can let go of the desire to make a name for ourselves. And we can also let go of any sense of superiority as well, because we know that it's simply God's grace that defines us. The gospel sets us free from self-centeredness to live God-centered and other-centered lives instead. To live lives of truly honoring others above ourselves. We can live to see others honored and valued before we are honored and valued. Why? Because we know that we've already been so honored and valued by God. So I ask, are you making this story your story? Are you allowing the gospel to change you in the way that you see the world? And do you know how valuable you are to God? So valuable that Jesus would give up his life for you. Let's pray as the worship team comes back up now. God, we thank you so much for your great, great love for us. We thank you that we read those words, while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us. And we thank you, Jesus, that through your death on the cross, you bearing our shame there, that we are restored to a place of honor in God's family. And Jesus, we pray that this story would continue to change us, that your Spirit would continue to just work in our hearts and make us more and more and more like you, Jesus. Pray all these things in your name.